Hey everyone, and welcome back to Timeless. I'm excited because I just made this spreadsheet and I haven't shared it with anybody yet. So last week at the Metagame Challenge, I asked everyone in my Discord to go ahead and self-report all of their runs so that I could collect data on them and put together some sort of data. So disclaimers that we're going to get out of the way before we start analyzing anything or drawing any conclusions. I got to disclaim this is not scientific data. It is riddled with bias if you've ever worked with data before. First of all, this is self-reported data. I asked people to self-report on Discord, and of course that brings into a bunch of different biases. People might lie. People might just forget to report some things. Also, this is sampled from people in my Discord server, which is more or less like the de facto competitive timeless Discord at this point. And that Discord draws a certain group of people. It draws the play to win crowd. So generally, these people are trying to spike this metagame challenge. They're playing to win, they're playing to 7-0, max out their packs, or they're possibly playing to try and beat the meta, or they're possibly playing to try and prove that their pet deck is good enough and can put up a 7-0. So establish all of those biases, and now we can go ahead and look at this data. So thanks to everyone who contributed, because we got over 400 data points. And honestly, even with all of these biases, I think we actually do have like meaningful data we can draw upon really quick. I'm going to do one thing really quick and then convince you that this data is not as biased as it might be. If we were to chart the overall like 0-1 win, 2-win, etc. runs like this, right? You would expect a normal distribution or something close to a bell curve when you chart this. And that is actually what we get. We do get a solid bell curve here, and the reason the bell curve doesn't have a tail on this end is because you're at 0 wins. You can't go lower than 0. And the reason that the bell curve does appear to jump here at 7 wins is because runs are capped at 7 wins. So really, in reality, this bell curve would actually have a really long tail. It would keep going like this really long, because it is possible to get super lucky and win 10, 11, 12, 13, or even more games in a row. In fact, we had somebody win 19 games in a row in this challenge, including back-to-back 7-0s followed by a 5-1. If you want to guess what deck that was with, maybe we could all guess that without even looking. So I think if we were not capped at 7 wins, this would actually make a nice right side tail on the bell curve. So I think this data is pretty legit for all of the biases that it has, and that we can draw at least some amount of conclusions from it. So we can see all of the usual players in the meta up here. I went ahead and grouped all of the results by deck. I didn't get super granular with the results because not every single person was posting their deck lists. So for example, all of the different Mardu Luris energy decks are lumped into one. There are variations in what you're going to play in their main deck in your sideboard in those decks. Same thing with Omnitel. The trend lately with Omnitel in that deck is to play Omnitel Control, where you play Mana Drain and you play just some discard spells sometimes in the main deck. And, it's not a true control deck, it's just a combo deck opportunistically playing Mana Drain, because that card is kind of busted, and also playing discard to both disrupt and protect its combo. And there's just, variations on how many Mana Drains, how many discard spells you're going to play. So that's why I did end up lumping everything together. We just don't have enough deck lists to get really granular with the separation. But if we look at the top players in the meta right here, which are all of these guys, right? All these top 7 decks right here. This is everything that had over a dozen runs and over 50 games played. We can see that the win rate spread is actually like really tight for most of them. Most of them, with the exception of one outlier in each direction, ended up between 71 and 75% win rate, which is a really tight spread, and that's indicative of a decently healthy metagame, at least in my opinion. The fact that all of these decks are putting up somewhat similar win rates. The exceptions being Jetstorm, which is a little bit lower, but not significantly lower, and that's honestly just because this deck is probably the toughest out of all of those 2 pilot. It's really difficult to pick up. In my opinion, the deck ceiling did get a lot better with the new introduction of Priest of Gix, because now there is like the Stitcher Supplier loop that you can do in the deck. But, of course, when you introduce new stuff like that, the decision trees get more complicated. People have to relearn the deck, and overall, there's so many more decisions than there used to be in that deck. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me, at least, that this has a smaller win rate. Also, just saying, the sample size isn't monstrous here. No one's 7-0'd with Jetstorm, but we had 3 different 6-1s. So, like, let's say they got a little luckier, and we ended up with 2 7-0s instead of 2 of the 6-1s. That win rate's much more in line, right? So small sample size. Don't read too much into little percentage differences, especially if you look at decks down here, lower in the spreadsheet. But the elephant in the room here, of course, is Mardu energy. This was the number one deck that people were playing overall in terms of total runs, number one by far in terms of the amount of games played, and overall, in terms of 7-0s, the winner by far. And the win rate for this deck was a solid 81.54%. That seems unrealistically high, but I'm going to be honest with you. I think this number is legit. I think the Discord server as a whole got close to an 81% win rate. Maybe there's a couple people who didn't self-report some lower win games, but at least if you look at my personal runs that I recorded down here, I ended up playing Mardu a few times. I 7-0'd twice, and I went 19-2 with the deck overall, which is a 90.4% win rate, if you could believe that. And there are some other Mardu pilots in the Discord who are like very, very good, and I can totally believe that all these people got around an 80 win rate with the deck. You gotta keep in mind, like the people in this Discord are like the really spiky, nerdy people who are gonna min-max the crap out of the deck. And also, this event tends to draw like a lot of tourists to the format. And there's like two kinds of tourists to the format, right? There's people who are really good at Magic, but they don't play much Timeless. So these people are pretty skilled, but they're going to lose some percentage points in some matchups just because they don't know the format really well. And if there's like a Mardu Energy mirror with one of these players versus one of the guys from Discord who's really an expert, the expert's going to win more often than not. And there's the second kind of format tourist who is kind of like a casual gamer. They just play Arena for fun. They saw in the main menu, oh, a challenge? Let me try that. And they register whatever deck, not even a Timeless deck. I played against someone playing a starter deck, for example. Like, it's entirely possible. A lot of your first round opponents are going to be people who aren't too familiar with Timeless, which is why we see a really inflated win rate out here. Round one win rate especially is just super inflated because you end up with a lot of people who don't necessarily play Timeless. Like, I think in my first 7-0 run, I got 2 or 3 of those opponents where it's like they clearly have never cracked a fetch land before in their life. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm gatekeeping or being mean, but it's just unfortunate that they saw a shiny button on their main screen and said, oh, I'm going to click it. And then it didn't really work out for them. So, disproportionately strong performance by Mardu Energy in the meta. In terms of overall win rates, though, it was not the best out of all decks. The best ended up being, now keep in mind, small sample sizes here, so don't read too hard into this. This is mostly just for fun that we're looking at this. The highest win rate ended up being Jeskai Chorus Control, a brand new deck. So at the tournament a couple weeks ago, it was Grixis Chorus Control. Ended up popping up as a new deck, and it got piloted to top 4. And the same guy who got it to top 4 got the 7-0 with the new Jeskai version of the deck. This version is super sweet. It is playing Yorion and Flage, so it's an 80-card Chorus Control deck. It's super awesome, and you can see the deck list if you go into my Discord server. There's a thread for it, so you can see the list there, and it was able to put up a 7-0, and it was only played 3 times, and every time it did well, so therefore we have a very high win rate here. But like I said at the tournament recap, I'm super excited about this new potential control shell. I'm super excited to see people play with the chorus cards, and I can't wait to see what else happens to this deck. We also had a lot of other decks that saw some amount of play and saw like 80 win rates, all these things in dark green here that are worth highlighting. One is Mono Black Midrange, which is one that I'm personally going to iterate on a lot because Mono Black Midrange was my main deck that I played before Modern Horizons 3 dropped. And Mono Black Midrange is a fair Dark Ritual deck where you are just Dark Ritualing into the One Ring, Dark Ritualing into Shieldred. Sometimes you're even doing a fair Necro in your deck. You're using the busted black fast mana to go very, very fast and do things ahead of schedule. So now that the format has settled into pretty much being an energy versus combo format, you can make a mid-range deck that sort of thrives in that area, which is pretty sweet. So looking forward to that. We saw high win rates with Tainted Pact, which is always a sweet deck. It's not a deck that's on my radar as like a tier 1 or tier 2 deck, but it's really sweet to see this go ahead and put up a high win rate. And then we saw just a bunch of other cool decks, which I do have a breakdown in charts on the next page as well. And anything else I want to talk about before we go to that next page? No, I think we can go ahead and go on to the charts. So I grouped all of the decks by archetype. I know it's a bit of semantics on what gets broken into aggro versus midrange versus tempo, but at least according to my categorizations, that's a word. At least how I categorized everything, we are in an aggro versus combo metagame, with aggro and combo both being over 40% of the metagame, which is a lot. The other three archetypes, they do exist, but they are definitely overshadowed by aggro and combo's presence in the metagame. The good news, though, is that combo isn't just representative of one oppressive combo deck. If we were to break out the top two decks in the format, Energy versus Omnitel, we actually have a lot more non-Omnitel combo decks than Omnitel itself, which is great to see. Unfortunately, we break out aggro. It's almost entirely Mardu energy. And this slice here is not other aggro. It is other energy. It's really not great. This sliver right here, 3 whole games. By the way, all of these charts are based on the games played column over here, which I think was the best metric for looking at this stuff. And it's just the total number of games that you played in your run with the deck. So Black White Belcher gets a 0-win run, that counts as 1 game. 1 win, or 0 wins, 1 loss. If they get a 3-win run, that counts as 4 games on that chart. And if they 7-0, it counts as 7. So yeah, 3 whole games of non-energy aggro. Again, it could be like semantics, what you call aggro, what you call mid-range. Those 3 games were 2 runs by Jund Delirium, which is the Arena of Glory, Fear of Missing Out, Nethergoyf, Turn the Boys Sideways deck, which is a sweet deck, by the way. But it went 0-1 and 1-1 in 2 different runs in the challenge. And here's a chart to blow it up. I made energy all the same color, and energy variance all the way down, almost entirely Mardu. And to avoid the semantics of what we classify as aggro, here is every single creature deck in the format. And we see just more of the same problem. No matter how many decks you try to include under the umbrella of a creature deck, this is pretty much every deck that has like at least 10 creatures in it. It's a Mardu energy world. An energy world as a whole, but really a Mardu energy world. With energy as a whole making up over 75% of the creature metagame. And our legacy fans here would love to see Psychic Frog Tempo as the next best deck. So if you're not playing energy, you're playing Frog. Because guess what? This is Frog Tempo, number 3 deck, also a Frog deck. This one's not, but this, Frog deck, Sultai, that's a Frog deck. So creature deck diversity, unfortunately, is at an all-time low, and I hate to admit it. There is a lot of room for innovating, like within the different energy shells, which I'll get to later. We'll talk about the cool different decks that showed up. But really, it's hard to build a creature deck that's not like a Psychic Frog Blue deck or an energy shell deck. It seems like Guide of Souls, Ocelot Pride are almost mandatory, and if you were to break down the most played cards at this weekend, it's not really possible for me to do because I don't have everybody's deck list. But I would bet that Ocelot Pride and Guide of Souls are probably the top 3, 2 of the top 3. I think number 1 would be Sword Splashers because every energy deck is playing that, and some other non-energy decks are playing it, like the Esper Frog decks. Number 1 would be Sword Splashers, and I bet number 2 is a 2-way tie between Guide Pride. It is really hurting deck diversity right now in terms of creature decks. These are the decks that I really like to build and try to build in the format, right? Look at older videos I have, it would be like, all right, guys, let's try to put together Amalia combo in this format. Let's try to make a cool birthing ritual deck. Let's try to play Yawgmoth, that sort of stuff. And it sucks. Diversity is really at an all-time low in terms of creature decks. But I do have some good news to leave you with. In terms of combo deck variety, diversity is at an all-time high. Omnitel is obviously the number 1, and here I've lumped all of the Omnitel decks together, keep in mind. So you actually could break this category up a little bit more. And then after Omnitel, which we all know is the clear favorite, there is a really nice distribution of the next few combo decks that you can go ahead and play in Timeless. Omnitel, all the variants are only 38% of the metagame, and the rest of it looks like a really healthy distribution, where we have a slice dedicated to one deck, a slightly smaller slice than the next deck, slightly smaller slice than the next one. This is roughly a ZIF distribution, it's called, where you have one big one and it slowly decreases. Though Omnitel might be slightly overrepresented for a normal ZIF distribution, but again, like it's fine. Honestly, fine by me. There are 7 different combo decks represented in this other category as well, too. So really cool that you could bring a bunch of different combo decks to the format, and Timeless still like provides this really cool environment where you could build some wacky combo decks and not have to worry about getting dazed 24/7. So Timeless is at least succeeding in that mission right there. As for the 7-0 runs, all right, and this is, again, Energy sweep, if you would believe it. I made all the energy decks blue again on this chart just to make it pretty obvious that these are all still energy. Energy is 65% of the 7-Os that we saw from the Discord. 14% to the next best deck, Omnitel, and then a couple of other different decks each getting some amount of 7-Os. We had a couple different people, 31 different people actually report their 7-Os for I think a grand total of 42 runs, which is a lot more than last time. I think last time we only had 23. Shout out to Novos, who got the most 7-Os with 4, also doing it with 3 different decks, which is awesome, playing Omnitel Control, normal Mardu Energy, and then Obosh. That Obosh win was really fun. It inspired me to try to play Obosh myself, and then I ended up just losing a bunch. Whatever. Dropped the Pop-Tart, ended up getting 3 wins, so second place to him. And then there are a couple of us, myself, Riley over here, Tommy G, Six, Snark, and JJ with 2 wins each. And by the way, Riley was the guy who ended up going 19-0 at one point. 2 7-0s in a row, followed by a 5-1 playing Mardu Energy, which is pretty crazy. Also, Riley came up with the new technology in Mardu Energy, which is Portable Hole. After I saw that, I'm like, oh, I got to put Portable Hole into my sideboard. Portable Hole is just the best removal spell imaginable against a Lurrus deck, isn't it? Think about it in the energy mirrors really quick if you haven't caught on to the tech yet. It removes everything, including like Goblin Bombardment, Flip to Johnny, Static Prison. Ooh, crazy card. So that's technology right there. That technology led to the 19-0. In terms of these 7-Os, any interesting ones? Chest Hair ended up winning it with Psychic Frog very technically. He played Omnitel Control with frogs in the sideboard, which is interesting. So you can make fun of him for not actually being able to win it with tempo, of course. There were some other cool ones here. I believe, yes, Binary. Ooh, I spelled his name wrong. Yell at me. Binary Soloist won it with Boros Energy, but a companionless version of Energy, which is really cool. Just because he was playing some double pip costed cards like Skyclave Apparition in the deck. So he said Giganta isn't quite worth it. So that was interesting, as was the Obosh Energy. So people are innovating on the energy archetype a little bit and trying different things. But overwhelmingly, the streamlined Mardu Energy deck is still the best. The Mardu Energy deck has not changed significantly since I made the sideboard guide on it, like the video sideboard guide a couple months ago. Like, obviously, I changed some cards and some configuration for this meta because I was expecting pretty much an aggro versus combo meta in this metagame challenge, and it ended up being true. Pretty much only people were playing energy or playing combo. I was expecting more Psychic Frog gamers, but whatever. Yeah, so it's a real aggro versus combo meta. Mardu deck hasn't changed very much, and it's still the best. Keep in mind, Mardu is a quick deck, and people are going to be inclined to play it if they want to 7-0 easily, right? That's why we see it really overrepresented in the 7-0s and in the number of runs. It's just because everybody in Discord knows if you want a quick, clean 7-0, minimal effort, you're going to want to spam Mardu. It's a pretty straightforward deck. Obviously, it's a very high skill ceiling deck, especially in mirrors, but in terms of the skill floor, there is not too much of a requirement in order to do decently with this deck, especially with a lot of format tourists and a lot of combo decks that you have a lot of sideboard cards against. People joke around and say that Amped Raptor always hits the right card, but you know what? After you sideboard, the only thing in your deck are busted energy creatures and sideboard cards. So that Amped Raptor, it's gonna hit a sideboard card, and if it doesn't, it hits up Guide of Souls or another busted energy card. The deck is constructed very, very well at this point, and it almost played itself. There was someone tilted in my Discord. Usually I don't encourage you to come into my Discord tilted and complained, but they referred to Mardu Energy as an easy bake oven aggro deck, and that was funny, so I let it slide. But yeah, energy, it's just free wins. It really does feel like free wins a lot of the time, and that is concerning. I am a bit concerned that creature diversity is at an all-time low in the format, and hopefully we get a shake-up soon. I know Timeless is a no bans format, so I'm not going to suggest banning or restricting part of the energy deck. It would be interesting and it would be refreshing to see something like a Guide of Souls restriction, but I'm not going to advocate for it or ask for it. I think this is something that will just change over time, especially if we get other really good tools for different decks, because if you look at Legacy or Vintage, all of the energy cards are legal in those formats, but those decks don't really get played. Energy is a fringe thing that you can play in Legacy, but it doesn't really come up all the time. So I just think as the card pool increases and then we get more options for doing creature decks, I think energy will naturally get a smaller and smaller role in the metagame, I would hope, especially if we get cool cards like Daze, Force of Negation, then blue creature decks would get a nice boost. If we got something like Aether Vial, then a Death and Taxes style creature deck would get a boost. So I'm hopeful that naturally this energy domination will go away and we won't have a big blue pie chart next time. But in the meantime, I hope you really do like playing Mardu. As for takeaways from this challenge, I do have decks that I want to work on. Like right now, immediately after this, I'm going to start playing some black mid-range. A lot of the guys in Discord have had some ideas for it. Of course, if you want to join the discussion or participate in this next time, join the Discord. I feel weird peddling my own Discord constantly, but I don't exactly make money off the thing. It's just a Discord server. And if you watched 20 minutes and 42 seconds of me talking about a spreadsheet, I think you would be very interested in this Discord server and you would respectfully engage in the discourse there instead of just flaming and calling things easy bake oven. So I'm very interested in this deck in particular. I'm going to work on it because it was a deck I really liked before MH3. The pieces are all still there, and the deck got like some big new cards like Grief, the ability to run Necrodominance if you want. I don't think I'm going to play Necrodom. New Sorin has showed up in this deck as well, the MH3 Sorin. So lots of new toys for the deck compared to before MH3, and now the format has settled, and it's really just like a Mardu versus combo format. You can make a deck that will thrive in that space. So that's probably what I'm going to go work on. I'm curious to see where chorus control goes because the old version didn't do as well. The new version piloted by the great players did do well, so I'm curious where this goes. And yeah, I'm curious to see if anybody else works on all these other combo decks, because even combo decks that I thought were more marginal ended up having a really good win rate. And that's another thing, another source of bias here. If only one person really loves Scholar of the Ages combo and they're going to force it, or if only one person really loves Shadow Sack and they just play it and they're the expert, it's going to inflate the win rate, as opposed to a bunch of people trying to jump on the Black-White Belcher train just because they think it's the easiest combo deck, or a bunch of people jumping on the Jetstorm train just because they saw Greaseball's video and they think, oh, I could do that, right? So that's why you're going to see a little bit of inflation due to small sample size and just some really good pilots playing the deck when you look at a deck like this one, or a deck like Tainted Pact, a deck like Jund Breach. Like I think all these Jund Breach runs, almost all of them, come from Snark, who kept forcing it until he got a 7-0 with it finally. Yeah, and here's the bottom of the spreadsheet if you were curious. I did record everything. So we do have like just a bunch of whatever decks here at the bottom. A bunch of random combo decks that show from time to time. People's Mid-Range Brews. This is Psychic Frog, just without the Esper Splash. Pretty much everybody agreed that the Esper Splash was best for this metagame challenge. I was actually surprised to see like how unanimous it was for Esper, because it was just one run of non-Esper Psychic Frog. Yeah, I don't main this deck, so maybe I was just a little behind on the discourse, but I thought there was still at least a little bit of a debate as to how you could build the list. You can build it to be Esper, you could build it to splash green or splash red instead of splashing white, but I guess we settled on Esper. Any more takeaways before I go ahead and close it? Oh yeah, Possibility Storm. See, there's some like cool random things that one person will bring. Like one person brings Possibility Storm, gets a 4-1, and then everyone in Discord is like, wait, can you send me the deck list? That's cool. Even if the deck isn't necessarily great. Oh yeah, Orzhov Energy. I was trying to make like a anti-meta energy deck like after I got the 2 7-0s. And I came up with like a black-white energy list playing Ranger Captain Evios, Chthonian Nightmare, Grief, Reanimate. It was pretty cool. Maybe I'll work on that more. Maybe I won't. Who knows? I want to work on Mono Black first, though. And, oh yeah, Mono White Control down here. Only one run with it. I kind of wish more people gave it, but the thing is, this is a very slow deck. So it's a deck that people are going to tend away from in the metagame challenge. Same with Esper Tempo, which is why even Chestair said, I know it did end up getting 2 7-0s, but Chestair like gave up on getting the 7-0 with it at a certain point because like he was so tired and burnt out from playing like 15 games with this deck, because this deck has really slow games, really decision intense games. It burns you out, or not in the sense that I hate Magic burnout, it's in the sense that, holy crap, I've been thinking for an hour straight. I can only play a couple of games in this in a row before I get the brain fog and I start making bad decisions and I start punting my games against energy, right? Right, I think other than that, I'm going to leave you guys. I think I went over everything in the charts that I want to talk about. I'll leave the 7-0 runs up so you can go ahead and see. Everybody who got a 7-0 here got a roll in Discord. I forgot to give you the roll, just let me know. And we're going to do this again next time too. If you want to join the Discord server, definitely. I think next time, by the way, I'm going to make like a form or something because we got a lot more entries this time than last time. I didn't want to do the manual data entry anymore. It took me a while to do 400 plus data points here. Someone asked me, did you do the individual games? Because a lot of people in Discord, what they would do is post, okay, game 1, I went 2-0 against Psychic Frog. Game 2, I went 2-0 against Show and Tell. Game 3, I went 1-2 against Show and Tell. My run's over. I had that data. That would have been over 1,000 data points additional to enter into here. I need an unpaid intern if you're gonna make me do that. And no, I can't like cheat by like writing some code, unfortunately. I would love to like write a code to analyze just the text output of that Discord channel, right? Take that Discord channel as a text, feed it to some code. But the thing is, it's all self-reported in plain text, right? And everybody's gonna type it up a little bit differently. So it would be tough, even if you like tried to use ChatGPT to like extract the data and have it be correct. So next time I'll make a form and hopefully collect even more detailed data. Hopefully having a form doesn't discourage people from responding. That's something I would worry about, but we'll get there next time. And if I make a form, we could share it outside of Discord too, because I know not everybody has Discord. All right, that's it. Join the Discord if you want to participate next time. Thank you again to everybody who self-reported the data. I really appreciate all of you who post in that Discord server every day.